Hello everyone, my name is Stephen Redman and welcome to another episode of Pastor's Library. This is the channel where we discuss everything to do with theology books that might be on a reading list for a seminary course, for a bachelor's or master's degree in theology or in biblical studies, or simply they're books that might pique your interest. Maybe you've even seen them in your own vicar's or pastor's office. So today I want us to talk about commentaries on a particular part of the New Testament. These are my favourite commentaries, and what I have to say is entirely my own words. I have not been forced or offered any benefit to give you these words. If you like what we have to say today, please leave a thumbs up on YouTube, because what that does is it helps popularise the channel to other people. If you subscribe and click on the bell, then you'll know whenever we launch another episode. So today I want to talk about commentaries on the Pastoral Epistles. Why do we call them the Pastoral Epistles? Because virtually no one has ever done a commentary on 1 Timothy alone, 2 Timothy alone, Titus alone. There are a couple, but the vast majority are grouped into this title of the Pastoral Epistles, where Paul is writing to his co-workers. So I want to start where I often start, which is with the New Testament theology range from Cambridge. Now this is a book that's 30 years old this year. It's 1994 published, 170 pages. This is written by Francis Young. It's called, amazingly, The Theology of the Pastoral Letters. And it's got sections on their Christology, their pneumatology, their eschatology, the Jewish law, teaching, leading by example, lots of things that you might expect for it to have. But I have to say, this book, despite its aging, is very readable, very accessible. I'm not really familiar with any other works of Francis Young, but I have to say, if this is an example, he was clearly a good communicator. And so I think this is a very worthwhile introduction to the Pastoral Epistles. Next, going from the thin to the heavy, this is Volume 10 of the New Interpreter's Bible Commentary. This is a 2015 published version, and this features James Dunn writing on the pastoral letters. Having said that, whereas these volumes tend to be very good because they have a reasonable size commentary on a lot of books, and this one includes Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, 1 and 2 Thessalonians, 1 and 2 Timothy, Titus, Philemon, Hebrews, James, 1 and 2 Peter, 1, 2 and 3 John, Jude and Revelation, which if you're paying £60, £70 for something like this, that's not bad value really. But this only has 89 pages on 1 Timothy, 2 Timothy and Titus, but this is the writing of James Dunn, the late great James Dunn, and seriously, this is well worth having. Now, I am going to refer to a particular passage in 1 Timothy in all of these commentaries, just to give you a sense of what the commentators are saying. 1 Timothy 4 verse 12, this is the verse that says, "Don't let anyone despise your youth." So what does James Dunn have to say about this? He says, the best way of answering such attacks would be for Timothy to show himself as a model worthy to be copied. So that's the words of James D.G. Dunn. Now, I've quite a few commentaries on the Pastoral Epistles, and some of these are maybe only worth mentioning in passing, but Thomas Oden did this one for interpretation called 1st and 2nd Timothy and Titus in 1989. I can't see that there's been any update of it yet. It's 190 pages. Although, to be fair, whereas it's probably a little bit over the edge for most quotes in essay writing, Odin's done a pretty good job with this, and it is definitely a worthwhile book. I wouldn't want to pay much for this now, though. So he says this in 1 Timothy 4:12. He says, teaching must be confirmed by concrete, courageous acts. Compassion, faith, and moral integrity will finally be much more important than age alone. That's Mr. Odin. This one is the Cornerstone Biblical Commentary by Tyndale. This has 1 Timothy, 2 Timothy, Titus, and Hebrews all in one volume. And this was published in 2009. It's got 478 pages. If I take off Hebrews, then that means it's 302. So 302 relevant pages to 1 Timothy, 2 Timothy and Titus. Now that means that this is quite a good level of detail in here. Now, what I would say to you is I think this is the only commentary I have in this series. I can't just think of another one, and I can't see one on the shelves, but I have to say I'm quite impressed by this, actually. Yeah, I remember I didn't have to pay a lot for it, and it's got an awful lot in there. It's got some good comments on the back, recommendations by Tremper Longman III, Grant Osborne, and so this is well laid out. And whereas the Tyndale Cornerstone commentary, like I say, I hadn't any other experience of it, this I would suggest to you, if it's still available fairly cheaply, this is a good buy. So that's Tyndale Cornerstone. It's Linda Belleville writes 1 Timothy, John Lansmar does 2 Timothy and Titus. And I think I bought this originally because Hebrews, which is included, has J. Ramsey Michaels as the author, and I'm a bit of a fanboy. But Linda Belleville of 1 Timothy, she says, in your purity includes sexual control, in addition to innocence and integrity. And whereas I think sexual control is inferred, there weren't many commentators I found that actually mentioned it, and I thought Linda Belleville was worthy of comment on that one. Now, this is the Tyndale New Testament commentary, so it's another Tyndale commentary. This was renewed in 2022 by Osvaldo Padilla, 284 pages, and it's simply called the Pastoral Epistles. And whereas I think the Tyndale New Testament commentaries can be patchy, I have to say, once again, I think they've done quite well with this one. And the 284 pages go into a good level of detail. You will definitely find something helpful on their pages. And I think what you always have to say about the TNTC is they are at least normally quite affordable. So what does Padilla have to say about 1 Timothy 4 verse 12? He says, Paul goes against cultural norms in not linking authority with seniority. Good one. Now, next is a commentary series that in general I'm quite fond of. It's the Abingdon New Testament commentaries. This is called 1 Timothy, 2 Timothy, Titus, and it's written by BWIII M. Batchelor, and this came out in 1996. So this is coming up, hopefully, for a renewal in the not too distant future. It's 223 pages. It's very accessible. It's very readable. The author seemingly communicates well. I certainly had no problem finding what I was looking for. I think that this series, whereas most of them are getting a bit old in the tooth now, they have offered an awful lot to people, and this one has 6 strong recommendations on the back page, including one from James Dunn. There's Leander Keck, there's Harold Attridge, plenty of good people on there, and this is certainly one to be worth thinking about. What I would say with commentaries like this might be a series you don't particularly want to collect, or I'm not so sure that collecting series is ever such a brilliant idea. You should collect good commentaries rather than good series. But, if you ever see one of these series, very reasonable, perhaps in a used bookshop, then these are always a safe bet. If you're paying £5, £6, £7, £8 or a similar amount of dollars, why would you even think twice? This is clearly a good value commentary. So, what does BWIII have to say about our passage? She says, purity can refer to sexual chastity, but often, as here, it has the diluted meaning of morally blameless actions. There you have it. Now, this is from what I am told is the most popular commentary series in the world today. This is the NIVAC, the New International Version Application Commentary. It's by Walter Liefeld, and it's called 1 and 2 Timothy, TITUS. And this was published in 1999, 378 pages. And as with all of this series, there is a strong emphasis on bringing a modern application from the text, which means that these are ideal for preachers, these are ideal for home group leaders, these are ideal for anyone that's looking for an up-to-date application. When I used to sell expensive hi-fi, which is a long time ago now, and they used to always say you need to sell the feature, the function and the benefit, and nobody actually buys anything on the feature or the function. They always buy the benefit, so concentrate on the benefit. They used to say to me, look round the shop, and if I point at any object, any piece of equipment, you should be able to give me 3 sets of feature, functions and benefits. And I trained myself that way. And what I've learned in the kingdom is that people really want to know the application of the Word of God. They really want to know what it means to them now. They want to make a fairly strong emotional connection with the Word of God. They want to know what God is saying to them, and they want to connect with that. And so these NIVACs, they have an obvious sense of appeal to someone like me who's pastoring a church still, and I think this one is definitely worthwhile. So, what does he have to say about our key verse? He says, in this passage, the key word is example. In 5 areas: speech, life, love, faith, and purity. These are specific enough, but taken together, they are all comprehensive enough to constitute an appropriate example. Thank you, Walter. And that's the NIVACs. Now, this is the Hermeneia commentary on the Pastoral Epistles. It's by Martin Debelius and Hans Conzelmann. And this was published in 1972. So, it's a bit old now. But it hasn't been replaced. And I have a good range of this commentary series. And in general, they are technical and they have something to offer that maybe even some of the other technical commentaries don't. I do think that they're worthwhile. I have to say that this one is really showing its age, I think. 174 pages for 3 books of the New Testament. It's not much detail. And frankly, I'm not sure that this would exceed the 89 pages I mentioned for James Dunn in the New Interpreter's Bible Commentary. I'm not sure that James Dunn's words don't count for more. I'm not going to chuck this away, but what I'm saying to you is I wouldn't go out of my way to buy it. A, it's too old for most essay quotations, and it's not actually that brilliant, I don't think. Anyway, looking for our key verse, you would really expect something novel, thought out, maybe a bit technical by one or two of these authors. But all you really get is a quote of Aristarchus I of Commanges. I don't even know if I've said that right. But he says, I have set forth clearly an example of their religious observance, which a holy man gives the gods and his ancestors, and I trust that they have a fine example to imitate. And that's the only thing that's really remotely relevant to our verse. So I would say, you've let me down today. Now, that set so far has been perhaps the ones that I'm not going to write home about. This is the literary and theological commentary on the New Testament. It's called Reading Paul's Letters to Individuals. It was published in 2008. It's 284 pages. And so this covers the Pastoral Epistles and Philemon. That's 284 pages. Now, what I would say is this series is very, very good at pointing out clearly where their author is going theologically, and so that you can see the overall theology of these writings. And I always think that's very important. And the more I read of this Reading the New Testament series, the more impressed I am with them. I have to say, this is one which is just as good as the others. It's written by W. Hullett Glower and Perry L. Stepp, neither of which I'm familiar with anywhere else. But here they have delivered a good commentary with a theological emphasis. So I think this is a very worthwhile commentary, and certainly one I would look out to. In addition, it's got this good section on Philemon. And again, frankly, I think it's the section on Philemon is better than some of the full books on Philemon, the full commentaries on Philemon. So I would say this is a particularly worthwhile one. What does the author have to say? He says, Timothy's task in Ephesus is to face down false teachers who seem to be entrenched in the church with broad support. Timothy must set an example that fleshes out his message for all to see. Very simple, very clear. You can see where the author is going with that. Now, this next one is one I've not had for very long. It's in the Pentecostal Old Testament and New Testament commentary series. It's called the Pentecostal Commentary on the Pastoral Epistles, and it's jointly authored by William Kay and John Moxon. And I've read, I think, almost everything that William Kay's ever written. I really admire him. I think he does a great job. And I think this is not a disappointment. In fact, I think this is an excellent commentary for pastors in particular, because this is pitched clearly at letting us know what Paul was telling his young pastors, Timothy and Titus, what they should understand and how they should govern the church locally. And so 273 pages in 2022. This is a good commentary. It's got good bibliography. Of course, it's an up-to-date bibliography. To my experience at the time of filming this, it's only 2 years old. It's very well laid out. This is an excellent commentary. And this is what they have to say about Timothy. It says, in a highly stratified society, age commanded automatic respect, and Timothy must overcome the tendency to dismiss him out of hand. I think that's a very well structured sentence or two, and I would suggest to you, if you see one of these, this is definitely a buyer and a keeper. Now, this is in a series called Understanding the Bible Commentary Series, and this is written by my longtime favourite Gordon D. Fee. This is a wonderfully constructed commentary. This pitches way above its weight. It's a truly academic work, but it's pitched at maybe more like pastors, students, Bible teachers, people who are leading a small group. This will appeal to all of those people. It's called 1 and 2 Timothy and Titus, and it was published in 2011. It's 332 pages. I don't remember what I paid for this, but I bought it new, and I remember I didn't pay a lot for it. I think this is a well-priced product in general, and I commend it to you. I think it's a very good commentary. This is what Fee has to say. He says, not only are they not to look down on him because he is young, but they are to look up to him. He is to set an example to all believers. And I like the way that Fee has just turned that a little bit on its head for us to understand. This is a 2023 commentary. It's the Pastoral Epistles by Scott McKnight, and it's one of the new Cambridge Bible Commentary series. Ben Witherington is the general editor. I very rarely don't immediately fall in love with anything that Ben Witherington has had anything to do with. And Scott McKnight, I am also very fond of. So this is really bound to be a volume that I got on with well. And I have to say I did do. I found this so accessible. I found that here McKnight addresses the issues you are looking for answers for, and is very first century and 21st century language. So I think this is something you can't go wrong with. It's 242 pages on the 3 epistles together, and he deals with all the major themes, and he expresses how Christians were to live in the Roman Empire in a way that does not offend public sensibility. So, what does he have to say on our key verse? He says, what earns respect, the apostle instructs, is lived theology, life that speaks the gospel. That's a wonderful summary of the position that Timothy finds himself at the end of Paul's pen here. I did say to you, who writes a commentary on 1 Timothy? Well, the answer is Ida Spencer. And Spencer has written 2 volumes in the NCCS. This is the New Covenant Commentary series. We've got a volume on 1 Timothy and one on 2 Timothy and Titus. And I find it interesting that they've made that split. I'm sure it's to do with keeping the price down. And these are very handy paperbacks. I have to say, this is a whole series that I really like. I don't think I've picked up a volume that I've been disappointed in. Or there was maybe one, but it's not either of these. These are very good commentaries indeed. They were published in 2013 and 2014, 178 and 169 pages. And these are well laid out, easy to process. A lot of use of bold type in these commentaries. And I really like that because it's something I use a lot of bold type in my own notes. You know, I try to be able to glide down the page from key verse, key phrase to the next key phrase. And this author is definitely doing that, which works for me because I like that. So I would say that these are very good value. They offer something that's up to date. The bibliography is up to date. It may not be massive. I mean, I think there's something like 5-6 pages in each of these, but they are really up to date and accessible. And you know what I always say, good bibliography makes the book. These are excellent enough for you to buy. So this is what he says about our key verse. Living out the faith is always important, but especially in a situation where one is conscious of non-believers potentially criticising. That's Ida Spencer. So the New Testament Library, which is Westminster John Knox publication. They come hardbound or softbound. This particular one, I managed to find the hardbound cheaper than the softbound, so I bought the hardbound. This was published in 2002. It's 408 pages for the 3 books that are having a comment on, and it's Raymond Collins is the author. Now, again, the NTL series, some are really good, I think, some not so good. But I actually really like this. I got on with it well. I find it direct. I feel like the author is speaking directly to me when I read the words on the page. And this is clearly a dependable book. I would suggest to you it's a very good commentary if you're looking for one on these. And of course, you might be watching this today and looking for 1 or 2 commentaries to help you in a study you're going to put together on the Pastoral Epistles. But really, you might sort of find 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 in my list that you might want to consider. And then you go out and you find 1 or 2 of them at a good price. And so you do buy those, and that makes a lot of sense. And if this fits into that category, I would definitely buy this one. I think it's excellent. So with its 408 pages, there's a fair amount of detail. I think this is well worth it. So what does he have to say? He says, the 5-item list of qualities that Timothy is to model for the sake of the community is comparable with the list of 7 qualities that Timothy observed in Paul in 2 Timothy 3 verse 10. Love and faith appear on both lists. So Collins is comparing qualities between Paul and Timothy, and he goes on to stretch that out a bit to help us understand that following Paul was a very important thing for Timothy to do, but Paul is looking for Timothy to demonstrate those same qualities. We're on to what looks like the last 7 on my list. And a lot of this now becomes much harder for me to be dogmatic about, because the truth is the next lot really are my top choices. Now, in 2013, the New International Greek Testament Commentary by George Knight was published, 514 pages on the Pastoral Epistles. Now, ultimately, this is always one of the greatest technical commentaries out there. Every passage starts with the Greek and translates into English, and then so on and so forth. The NIGTC series are all excellent. I would say to you, my only hesitation about this is, I've told you it is a 2013, but it isn't. It's a 1992 hardback that was published in softback in 2013. Now, you know, the honest truth is, if you're commenting from the 2013 version, then you can quote that in a university essay. But if you're quoting from the 1992, you're over the 30-year limit. Most of your reviewers, most of your markers are going to start to be a little bit critical about that. All I would say is, if you're wanting to quote from what is still one of the finest technical commentaries, the Pastoral Epistles out there, please go and buy the paperback. But the hardback is a delight, and it's still, as far as I understand it, is still the same text. If I had a paperback to look at, I could comment whether or not it literally is the same pages and page numbers, which hopefully it is. So the answer is, quote from the hardback, but on the paperback age. That's all I can say. The administration of the apostle is that Timothy not let this become a faction, since the apostolic instruction and the administration are at stake. The antidote it gives us is to overcome the tendency of others to look down on youth by demonstrating a maturity in life and conduct. An absolutely excellent summary from George W. Knight III, still a classic commentary. Now, Ben Witherington III has already had a mention today. This is Letters and Homilies for Hellenized Christians, Volume 1, subtitled A Socio-Rhetorical Commentary on Titus, 1 and 2 Timothy, and 1, 2 and 3 John. Now, if you take 1, 2 and 3 John out of this, then there are 390 pages on the Pastoral Epistles, which is a lot of detail. It was published in 2006, and I really do mean 2006. It's 623 pages if you include the section on John. And I have to say, having recently used the sections on 1 John quite exhaustively, this is a brilliant commentary. But this is no worse than it is on the Pastoral Epistles. 1 Timothy is absolutely excellent, and I think that Ben Witherington has an overview of the Timothy-Titus similarities, which is excellent and will help you. Ben Witherington is simply a great mind, and as a man that has written commentaries now on every book in the New Testament, he is someone to really consider and look out for. I certainly commend him to you. What does he have to say on our key verse? He says, Timothy found the mantle of power, something that rested uneasily on his shoulders, at least a couple of times. He is to be a moral and theological exemplar of the gospel that he preaches, an embodiment of it. I think Witherington goes further in his comments on this than probably anyone else. I think the idea of him being moral and theological exemplar, that is brilliant. Whatever you're wanting from a commentary on Titus 1 and 2 Timothy, or 1, 2 and 3 John, you will find it in this book. This is one, if you can get a good price on it, get it immediately. It's brilliant. The Two Horizons commentary on the New Testament, I think these are a very good series. They're paperback only. This one is called 1 and 2 Timothy and Titus by Robert W. Wall with Richard B. Steele. It was published in 2012. It's 416 pages. And this is another commentary which has a sort of a fairly separate theological overview of the text, which is really, really excellent. I think that this commentary is worth waving in the air because it is an absolutely excellent commentary. Those 416 pages, it's got a good bibliography. This will help you develop your studies of the books, and it will help you where to look next. And I think that this is an outstanding commentary. These, of course, are published by Erdmans, and they offer an awful lot. Wall says this: he bids Timothy's active participation in a disciplined process of becoming godly through his performance of a variety of personal and professional practices. What a great summary in a great commentary, one that will serve you very, very well. Right, this one is the Anchor Yale Bible commentary. It's called the First and Second Letters to Timothy, and so it doesn't include Titus. And this is by Luke Timothy Johnson, who is a very capable and quite profound commentary writer. He has given us so much overall to look at, and this one is excellent. This was published in 2001. It's 494 pages on those two books of Timothy, and so this will give you probably as much detail as anything else on the market, and it will give you Johnson's overview, Johnson's deep understanding, and I think this is an excellent commentary. You can get these in paperback. Mine is the hardback, red binding with the red slip cover. And I think that this is definitely one to put on your looking for list. He says here, the moral teacher is to present himself as a model of the virtues he professes. Very succinct, direct, a great summary of the passage. This is academic, it's accessible, it's Luke Timothy Johnson. What else could you look for? Now, I'm going to come now to my top 3. Mounts has written what looks to me roughly like the biggest, fattest commentary on 1 Timothy, 2 Timothy and Titus. It's simply called the Pastoral Epistles, and it's volume 46 in the Word Biblical Commentary, and this is William Mounts who's written this one. It was published in the year 2000, 641 pages. This is incredibly detailed, technical. Now, I was going to put this as second, but it's dropped to third on my list. And the really reason for that is that I feel that there are some people who will really struggle finding their way through this. It does suffer from the last incarnation of the WBC, of not quite white paper with not quite black ink, and just very little attempt to lay out the text on the page in an accessible form. And so this is one of those books that you don't want to be reading on a dark night without your reading glasses. This is something where you've got to pore over it. But in terms of its technicality and the depth to which it goes, probably nothing quite to touch it. But if you don't like going to the real depths of language interchange, and if you're not so fond of having an English dictionary next to you so you can understand all the words on the page, this is probably not going to be in the top 2 choices. But I really wouldn't want to be without Mounts. This is a really brilliant commentary, and I am hoping that if they do with this what they recently did with Thessalonians in the update, getting someone else to attend to helping the author puts the words on the page in the most accessible way, I think the next version of this would be absolutely brilliant. I'm going to do a sort of Moses the lawgiver quote here and say, you can prize this from my cold dead hand. But the real issue is that I'm just not so sure it is going to be so widely helpful to pastors, to students that have committed, maybe you've done your bachelor's degree, you're working on your master's. This is really brilliant. But this is definitely a hard nut to bite. It's also a heavy book, and you can wedge your door open with it. Okay, down to my top 2. And in second position is David Ackerman's New Beacon Bible Commentary on 1 and 2 Timothy and Titus, subtitled The Commentary in the Wesleyan Tradition. This was published in 2016. It's got a voluminous bibliography, a bibliography that will put you in a bang up to date position where you know what's out there, what's really good that's out there. It offers 462 pages on our 3 books of the New Testament. This is really excellent. And whereas this is not a technical commentary, it is an academic commentary. And I would suggest to you that for most of us out there, this is probably as high as you need to go. These are very, very good at encompassing quotes from old commentaries which are way past your 30 years, which allows you to quote from them, of course, in a modern commentary. But this series embraces the old, but really with the newest research that's out there. And so I highly commend this to you. I just felt, when studying 1 Timothy through this, it's absolutely brilliant. It's a breath of fresh air. I felt it offered me so much. In fact, it wasn't much different, really, I felt, to what Ben Witherington was offering, and I pitch him really up there. But this is a truly excellent commentary. If you haven't tried this series, please do, because I find them brilliant. But I would certainly recommend this one, David Ackerman, and it's a brilliant commentary to have. So what does he have to say about our key verse? He says, strong words or signed letters are not always sufficient to resolve church issues. Don't we all know that? The way not to be despised by others is to be a positive role model to them. Again, this is beautifully and succinctly put by someone who is good with words, who will help us get to the bottom of the passage. I think that is a dream book. I really do. Okay. Top choice. The best one, I would say, is the New International Commentary on the New Testament. It's called The Letters to Timothy and Titus. It's by Philip H. Towner. It was published in 2006. This has got 886 pages. This is a hefty academic commentary. This is not a technical commentary. This is a commentary that will take you to the top of academic thinking, and it will help you see what's behind the words on the page. This is a really brilliant volume to go for. I love the New Beacon Bible commentary. I don't in any way retract any of my recommendations for it. And you will get the NBBC an awful lot cheaper than you'll get this for in general. But this is going to be always a classic. The NICNT series offers so much, and this particular volume gives you all the level of detail you're looking for. You will find something on every item that you're looking for. Whereas I mentioned the Hermeneia commentary, there were some things I looked up that I couldn't find anything on. I've not found that with this book. Whatever I'm looking about, it's there. It's really quite brilliant. So for our last quote, here we have what Philip Towner has to say. He says, Paul's practice of dispatching co-workers authorised to act in his place, instructing and disciplining, meant putting them in very ticklish ministry situations. And this must be the only time I have read the word ticklish in an academic commentary, and so this was certainly worth mentioning for that point. But it does just give you a sense of he's sending out younger men than himself, he is putting them in a ticklish position, and he has authorised them to instruct and to discipline in his place. A great summary, a wonderful way of understanding a key verse. So that's my top recommendation for commentaries on the Pastoral Epistles. Most of those that I've offered you today are really good. The last 6 or 7 are brilliant. I commend all of those to you. I hope it's helped you in some way. If it has, please remember to give us a thumbs up. Remember to subscribe and to click on the bell if you haven't done. And if you've got anything to ask or comments to add, why don't you just leave them below? I do try to get back to everybody in due course, and I hope to hear from you soon. So until next time, guys, I've just got to say bye!